Our next speaker has held many positions and posts, but I think the accolade he'd most like to be remembered by is the father of the 18th Amendment. Can I invite Mr. Raza Rabbani to share his thoughts?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The Honorable former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Janab Abbasi Sahab, the former President of the Karachi Bar Association and moderator of these proceedings, Mr. Salahuddin Sahab, Dr. Nafisa Shah Saiba, and Senator Zafar Sahab, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I am grateful to the organizers for having given me this opportunity to be present amongst you and to be able to share my thoughts on the question of separation of power as envisaged in the Constitution 1973. I think while I was sitting and I was hearing the eloquent discourse of Zafar Saab and then Dr. Saiba, I was also seeing a bird that was fluttering about in this marquee. And I was wondering to myself, and I was wondering that why so many people, including myself, are not trying to get hold of that bird. But then I realized that I had strings attached to my hands, and that I, like all of you, are puppets, and therefore we could not try and get hold of that bird of separation of powers. Who are we puppets of? And when I say we are puppets, I do not for a moment try to distract from the blame that historically rests on my class of politicians. But when I say that, then I believe that all of the stakeholders must have the moral courage to stand up and say that they were wrong. And where does this start from? It starts from, ladies and gentlemen, according to me, from 1947. And what happened in 1947 was that the dream of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah for Pakistan, which was to be a welfare state, which was to be a progressive state, which was to be a federal state, which was to be a parliamentary democracy, that dream of his was changed, and Pakistan became a garrison state. Pakistan became a national security state. और जब पाकिस्तान एक गैरिजन स्टेट बना और पाकिस्तान एक नेशनल सिक्योरिटी स्टेट बना, तो रियासत के तकाजे तब्दील हो गए, बदल गए। हम सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स की बात करते हैं। We say that the Constitution was not framed from 47 to 1956. What happened to the Constitution of 56? What happened? And I'm ashamed to call it a constitution, but since it is on the statute books, I have to say that the 62 Constitution was a constitution. What happened even after the 1973 Constitution came? Pakistan's establishment has played around with this country, and we have had something like 8 different experiments. Sometimes we had a military dictatorship. Sometimes we had one unit and parity. Sometimes we had a presidential form of government. Sometimes we had a quasi-presidential form of government. Then we had partyless elections. Then we had an unelected Majlis-e-Shura. Then we had a chief executive. And then we now have a controlled democracy. जनाब, जब आप ऐसे एक्सपेरिमेंट्स करेंगे तो फिर आइन पे क्या दोष? फिर आप कैसे कह सकते हैं कि क्या सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स है या नहीं है? Trichotomy is a beautiful word. And when I was a student like you, and that was not very long ago, don't go by the color of my hair, I was fascinated by this word. But when I came into practical politics, I was bewildered by this word. Ladies and gentlemen, we must learn today, what, 75 years down the line? Is it not a shame that we are still a nation in search of its moorings? क्या ये शर्म की बात नहीं है कि आज भी हम यहां खड़े हैं और इस तजब्जुब में हैं कि इस मुल्क का निजाम हुकूमत क्या होगा? आप बात करते हैं सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स की। You must realize that throughout Pakistan's history, you had a monopoly. Let me repeat it. You had a monopoly of Pakistan's ruling establishment, essentially Pakistan's civil and military bureaucracy. And what we are witnessing today in the transition is not a transition of democracy, but what we are witnessing today is essentially a transition from monopoly to dominance. Dominance of Pakistan's civil and military bureaucracy on each and every sphere of life, on each and every department that functions under the state of Pakistan. हाँ, और उसके अंदर you have this situation where you have people and stakeholders who are jockeying to get more position, to get more power than was envisaged for them in the Constitution. ये मैं मानने के लिए तैयार नहीं हूं कि पाकिस्तान की अशराफिया, चाहे वो सिविल मिलिट्री ब्यूरोक्रेसी हो, चाहे वो जुडिशरी हो, चाहे वो पॉलिटिशियंस हो, कि वो आइन से गाफिल है, वो आइन को समझते हैं, लेकिन जब डोमिनेंस रिप्लेस कर रही है मोनोपोली को, तो वो समझते हैं कि चलो इसमें जितना शेयर ले सकते हो ले लो। इसलिए आपने देखा, like Dr. Saiba said, Parliament has been made redundant. I'm a member of Parliament. And I say this with the heaviest of heart, because I know Pakistan is a federation, and until and unless there is a parliamentary form of government and a bicameral legislature, the federation cannot function. The provinces will be denied their due, full and rightful right under the Constitution. But today Parliament is redundant. It is not even a debating club. Pehle kaha jata tha कि it is a debating club. It is not even a debating club now. And it has been done with deliberate intent. Like politicians were demonized, it has been done with deliberate attempt. It is a very vast subject, but let me just wind up by saying that on the one hand you have the executive, which has taken away the powers of Parliament. In terms of legislation, we have had legislation through ordinances, one ordinance following another. Respect for Parliament has been to the extent that if a House of Parliament has disapproved an ordinance, it has been repromulgated by the President. You've had a President who, without applying his mind, has gone on to make Article 89 a factory tool, a factory machine. And then, and I'm just winding up, Salahuddin, and then what to talk about the judiciary, the doctrine of reading in, which has now newly been introduced, which tantamounts to rewriting the Constitution. Yes, if an unconstitutional act has been performed by a functionary of Parliament, the courts can look into it. But the sanctity of Article 69 of the Constitution has been thrown to the winds. We have had orders which have dictated the timetable of the Parliament and of the provincial assemblies. Down from 9 o'clock to 9, 5 past 9, this will happen, 6 past 9, that will happen. If that is not an infringement on the internal proceedings of Parliament, then what is? You have had high courts issuing notices to standing committees. Standing committees are an internal and integral part of parliamentary proceedings. Proceedings of Parliament proceedings of standing committees have been stayed in the recent past by the judiciary. The question that now arises is that all this has happened and is happening. What is the way forward? And I'll just take 1 minute on that. According to me, the way forward is a grand national dialogue. And that grand national dialogue has to be in 2 phases. The first phase has to be amongst all political parties, all political stakeholders, and they have to come to an agreement in the form of a charter of democracy too. And until and unless a Charter of Democracy 2 is not established, an economic charter cannot come forward. And the last dialogue that needs to be take place after the COD2 is an intra-institutional dialogue. A dialogue between the executive, a dialogue between the judiciary, and a dialogue between Parliament. I apologize for having consumed so much time. Thank you so much.